Let's do it.
All right. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Loaded Dice Podcast. I believe we're on episode 5 here. We got a very
Boom.
special episode for you guys. Later, we are going to be joined by Aikado, top 8 finisher in Worlds. Very talented player, new to the streaming game. Make sure you guys check him out. If you guys haven't checked him out, I'm going to drop his links and stuff in the description. So make sure you check out our boy. But we're back for another episode.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. A lot has happened in the lore universe. Obviously, we did have Worlds, and it went, I would say, really well overall. They did have some issues on the day of the open rounds with who's qualified, who's not qualified. That would probably be the drama that happened. But after they got past that, like, the broadcast went really well. There was good viewership, too. Like, I think in the finals, there were like 15K or something people watching live, which is awesome to see. And we were treated to like just some crazy good gameplay. Like probably the best tournament gameplay we've ever had, I would say, happened at Worlds.
Absolutely. For all the tournaments I've seen and watched up until this point, this is the first card game I've played and followed in that way, and that was the best I've seen. Gameplay was stellar. Just everything all around the broadcast. It was also cool just talking about like the commentary. They had like a lot of different players and people rotated in and out and got, good representation of everything. Like it went, I think, as well as it could have gone after that initial hiccup. Like the top 16 phase and everything was just stellar for sure.
And yeah, they only missed out on having, the loaded dice featured either as casters or players, but there's next year. We'll be coming for it.
They're saving it. They're saving the best for last for sure.
Introducing today's guest. It is confirmed top 8 Worlds gamer Aikado. So we're going from seasonal champ Mo to top 8 Worlds gamer Aikado. We're just continually rising the ante here on Loaded Dice. But dude, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yo, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, it's a tough act to follow if I'm following Mo, right? But yeah, I'm used to that since I lost to him at seasonals. I'm used to being right behind him.
Very true, but not in this case. You got him on Worlds for sure. So
Yeah.
speaking of which, so your Worlds climb, kind of talk through first the like preliminary level, kind of your experience that day. I know a lot of people had a lot to say on the first um day going into
Yeah.
like before the top 16. So just wondering about your experience, prep, everything like that.
Yeah, so I mean, for like the qualifier, I was surprised to even be qualified for the qualifier for Worlds, honestly. Because I had to top 2 the seasonals to even get there. I wasn't expecting that shit. So by the time I actually got around to prepping for Worlds, um, there was the new set. I didn't expect to have to care about the new set. Like, I'm not gonna have to play in Worlds. So I was a
Yeah,
little bit behind on that. But, once it came out, a lot of the decks were really similar. Thankfully they nerfed Sivir. So we didn't have to deal with that as much.
yeah, a
Um,
lot of people didn't know that that was gonna come through. I remember like they kind of dropped that kind of the last second on you guys.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I thought it was bad enough that it was going to be okay. We're having Worlds 9 days after a huge patch with brand new set coming out, but then they're like, oh, by the way, we're just going to completely nerf the top 3 decks 3 days before the actual qualifiers. Like, what the fuck? But I
Yeah,
mean, I wasn't playing any of the decks, so it's okay. I got a bit of an edge there just because I wasn't planning on bringing Sivir anyway.
absolutely. What was your lineup going into for the first one? Was it
So the
same
first
or?
one, yeah, I ended up going with Draven Ezreal, Lulu Poppy, but with the Ionia version. I tried the Bandle City version, but just didn't have the any success with it. I know a lot of people think it's really good, but I just didn't have as much success with it. And then Zoe Nami, pretty standard. I think other than I ran Ezreal, not a whole lot of people ran Ezreal and Draven Ezreal, and then I ran Ionia, and a lot of people ran Bandle City.
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing a lot of the Bandle City version in the top 8 and like top 16 section of the
hmm
tournament. People were on that for sure. So then how was your like run that day?
Well, so I mean, on the qualifiers, it was great. I mean, I only dropped like one game
That's nuts.
throughout the 4 rounds. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just rolling really high. I was hitting everything I needed to be hitting. I got some really good matchups. I just kind of farmed Zoe Nami. I think a lot of people brought it and just it didn't have quite as much success as they were expecting to have with it. And my decks were pretty good into it. So I just kind of farmed that for a few games, and thankfully I ended up winning 4-0. It's so much easier to go 4-0 as opposed to going into like the
Yeah,
losers bracket where like Majin lost in the first round and had to win like 7 in a row after that. Some crazy shit.
Absolutely.
Thankfully I was good enough in the 4 games I needed to win, right?
Yeah, staying in winners is big because, like you
did you
said,
feel a difference too between like that and a seasonal open in terms of like quality of player? Was each match just a lot closer? You had to think a lot harder, or did it feel kind of like the open rounds of seasonal with higher stakes?
I think it was a lot harder than the open rounds of season. The open rounds of seasonals, I mean, it's 9 rounds, and sometimes you just run into random gauntlet players who are just playing like some crazy shit. Um, Whereas going into the 64 players who were qualified for Worlds, every single person in my quadrant was like, "Oh, I've ran to that guy before. That guy's really fucking good at the game."
yeah,
So every single time, it's scary going into every single game. You know that they're not going to make that many mistakes. You have to make as few as possible yourself and capitalize on theirs. It's very high stakes, and the opponents are all incredibly good at the game.
absolutely. So the shift going into top 16 now, you made your 4-0, you did it. How'd it feel, first of all? Like, you know what I mean? To be knowing that you're going to go on that big stage going into the top
It was
16 phase, and then just like, what adjustments do you feel like you needed to make, if any?
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I only started playing this game like 6 or 7 months ago. Around the time that
Crazy.
they announced Worlds, and I was like, "Oh, that'd be super cool if I could make it." I mean, I
Yeah.
can't make it, but it'd be cool if I could. Um, so to actually be able to qualify it for it was just an incredible feeling. I didn't expect to get that far. I didn't expect to qualify for the qualifiers, and then I didn't expect to actually make it into top 16. It was
Yeah.
crazy. So I mean, a lot of prep I think went into the next week. I think it was like 10 days or something that we had. I scrimmed a lot of the matches. I ended up running back the same lineup. I changed a few cards here and there, but it was a lineup that I had tested with for a few weeks before. It was the decks that I landed on that I thought were really strong. So it was gonna take a lot, I think, to like take me off of those decks. At that point I was like, these are my comfort decks. This is what I've been playing. I'm just gonna end up running it back. I changed a few cards here and there, but yeah, I felt like they were pretty strong decks.
I mean, to go 4-0, that says a lot. It's not like you
Yeah.
just like barely made the cut in.
Yeah.
I feel like it would take like a hard meta read or something shifting to really make you want to change it up from that point.
Not even
Um,
just a
I
4
think
0
with
one
like
game dropped.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think with like a few more days, if I had seen like the Ezreal Shellfolk deck and had a few more days to test it, or if like the Ping City TF Gangplank Bandle City bullshit, I think if those decks had come out a few days earlier, I might have been able to change off of what I was playing. But otherwise, I had decided these were the decks that I felt were strong and the ones I were comfortable with, so I just sort of ran it back.
Yeah. And then going into that top 16, did you know, because I know it's like a round robin, did you know the players in your pool before, prior, or is that kind of like,
So they told us who was going to be in there. But the only person that I'd heard of before was Cosimo. I was a Spanish player. He's very good. I think that he's known for being like an aggro player. So I was like, fuck, I have to deal with aggro in my group. I'm not crazy about that.
yeah,
Um, but then I got a couple of Asia players as well. Ping Ping Ho, who's supposed to be just insane over there.
yeah,
And then How to Die, and I hadn't heard of him, but nobody accidentally gets into top 16, right? Like these are all very good players, and I was pretty worried going in, I think.
absolutely. And then just going straight into there, I think I remember you started off against Ping Ping Ho to start off the run. How was that? How was it? Any nerves? Any did it feel different than these other different levels that you were playing prior, or
I mean,
just like,
I
yeah,
definitely, nerves, a lot of anxiety. I didn't sleep very well the night before, right? Because it's the
Dang.
night before Worlds. And I they released like the deck list on Monday night, so I saw what everyone was playing, right? And then we didn't actually play until Thursday. So I had like 3 days to sweat over the matchups. I'm looking at like what Ping Ping Ho brought, and he brought like some triple aggro, the most coin flip aggro discard list that I've seen in my life, where he took like one rummage, one experimenter. He's just out here to high roll people.
yeah,
Um, and I was very worried just because there were a lot of really bad matchups for me. Um, and Ping Ping Ho, he didn't quite high roll me. I was able to end up taking that series from him. But it's a little bit scary for a few seconds, definitely.
I remember, I believe it was you on your Ezreal deck against one of his aggro decks. Like, it
Hmm.
looked like you might not be able to stabilize for a second, and you were able to kind of just like slow that down and shut him, shut down the game plan. That was huge for sure. I feel like you said, just super potential for like a high roll. So
Hmm.
it's a little
Yeah,
crazy
no,
when it might not be like totally in your control as in some regards against that.
for sure. But I was really glad that I ended up bringing comfort decks, just because in that situation where they aren't great matchups, and I'm definitely anxious because it's the biggest stage I've played on before. Just being able to be on comfort. And the fact that he left my Draven Ezreal up, I felt like it had the best shot into his aggro decks, and just being able to start out with that and pick up the win, I think was really important for me.
Yeah, that's got to
Absolutely.
build confidence, like playing at that level, and then you pick up your first win into a really strong opponent.
For sure.
So then, what? At, take me through your next, two series because you did emerge from the group stage victorious. So what did the rest of
Yes.
that run look like?
So round two was against Cosimo. And Cosimo was like the one person who brought Nami Zoe, which made me feel pretty good because I have pretty good matchup into it. I feel pretty confident playing into it. And that one ended up going 3 games, but I know there was like a really long grind fest between like Draven Ezreal and Nami Zoe that I ended up just barely squeaking out of. And then I think game three was less close, but it was definitely a nail biter. But after I picked that one up, I just needed Ping Ping Ho to pick up 1 game ever, and then I'm guaranteed as the first seed out of there. And he ended up picking up a game against somebody. Um, so then going into my third round, I knew that I was already coming out for the first seed in my group, so the outcome of the game didn't matter. I ended up,
Yeah.
maybe memeing a little bit. I went kind of all in a couple times, and yeah, I ended up losing. 1-2. But uh, overall, I was really happy with day one. Just being able to come out as the first seed in my group, against some really strong players. It was really, really an awesome experience.
Yeah.
You had it's definitely worth noting, and there's a giant Slayer article out about it, but you had already like an incredible run leading up to this world's performance. You would play second in a seasonal. I think you'd already picked up a couple fight night wins back to back. So was that success prior to worlds? Do you think that contributed to your confidence as a player and in your own ability like going into this tournament?
Absolutely. I mean, I had made it through. I sort of started the run off by like getting to top cut at seasonals, and before that, I would be surprised if many people were like, "Oh, that Aikado guy, he's kind of good at the game." Maybe I'd top cut a couple tournaments, but nothing too big. And then I went 8-1. I made into the top cut at the seasonals. I'm like, okay, well I kind of high rolled my way here. And then the top cut at seasonals, I took a super polarized lineup, where I was like, if I run to Lee Sin, I ought to win the game. If I run to control, I ought to win the game. If I run to aggro, I ought to lose. So, that ended up carrying me to second place. I'm like, well, I brought super polarized matchups. So it was nothing really. I just kind of high rolled my way there. And then I 4-0'd at Worlds qualifiers, and then I won a fight night, and I'm like, shit, maybe I'm actually good enough to be able to contend with these players. It was definitely a massive increase in my confidence. It sort of got rid of the I high rolled my way here. It was just a fluke to like, maybe I actually belong up here. Maybe I'm good enough to play at this level.
It's
I think
a
you
it's a
definitely proven
weird
that.
thing about
Yeah.
card games. I feel like where we have to like do so much over performance to justify being a top level player. Whereas like
Hmm.
in shooters or other games where maybe there's less variance, you have like one good performance and everybody says you're the best. But
For sure, for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely. So another storyline I feel like that was carried throughout Worlds was just obviously the battles of the different regions. And that day one with you and What Am I coming out of the top of the pools, did you feel any of the pride repping NA in that way? Were you involved in that at all? Because I remember day one, NA was talking. We were talking
Yeah,
that
no,
mess.
it was kind of nice. I mean, for once, North America in like Riot games usually doesn't do that well. Like that's just kind of how we do. League of Legends, we make it to Worlds automatically, and that's about as far as we go. Making it out of group stage at Worlds, that's not a real thing for North American players. So to
Yeah.
actually have a Riot game where it's like, maybe we're okay at this game, maybe we're actually able to do something. For one day, we're feeling pretty good. Both of the both of the NA players made it out. As seed one. All three of the Americas players that played in day one made it out. We were flying pretty high, and then it's kind of downhill from there. But for that first day, we're feeling pretty good.
Riding high for sure.
Yeah.
So going past the first day, going into, well, I guess it would be day 3 now at this point when you guys are playing that top 8. Just talk to me about the day in between leading up to that and then into your first match of the top 8.
I was so glad that I had the day in between, that I played on day 1 and then I didn't have to play on day 2. Just because if I had to sit all the way through day 1, I didn't sleep that well the night before I played anyway, but if I had to sit an entire day and watch other people play and just have the anxiety the entire time, it would have been too much, I think. But, having the buffer day in between where, I already qualified. I don't have to worry until tomorrow, right? I can just watch this high level play. And there was incredibly high level play on day 2. That was really nice to have the day off and be able to watch the people that I would be playing against. It was definitely massive.
Absolutely.
So what was it like then going into that day where you're playing in the top 8? Did you have the same level of nerves as the other 2 days of the Worlds tournament, or was this kind of on another level even from that? Or did you already kind of feel like you had gone beyond your expectations going in, and anything at this point was kind of icing on the cake?
I mean, at every single step along the way, I've gone well above my expectations. From topping the seasonals to qualifying for Worlds to actually qualifying for Worlds to make it out of my group. At every single step, I was definitely going above what I was expecting and what I was, hopeful for. So, I mean, I was definitely anxious coming in. I saw my side of the bracket, and Yamato was playing really well. That's who I ended up having to play in my first round. And even the people on my half of the bracket, I had like Shihu, who brought some real spice. I'm like, if I run into him, I actually don't even know what I'm banning. I don't know how I play into any of these matchups. So I was definitely worried. And, Yamato had brought some decks that, I wasn't favored into. I don't think I had been favored into like any lineup all weekend. If I went to back and changed my lineup, I would absolutely change my lineup just because, I don't know if it was my read or just people brought what I didn't expect them to bring. I don't think I was favored into anyone. So the fact that I picked up wins at all, I think I'm happy with.
Absolutely. So talking about Yamato, like, I think he was definitely one of the dark horses that, went above and beyond in the tournament as well.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like playing against him? Did you just talk about that, just him as a player and what you saw from that?
I mean, he played extremely well. He drew really well. He ended up playing around a lot of cards in like such a way that was really, really hard for me to deal with, honestly. He took like matchups where I'm like, okay, I'm like 45, 55 into this. I can high roll my way there. I can play well, and I can come out on top in this matchup. Like one of them was the Plunder matchup that when I won Fight Night, I like 4-0'd Plunder the entire way every single round. I'm like, okay, I can beat this.
Yeah, for sure.
But then playing against his, it's like, well, shit, he drew really well. He just sort of rolled me over. I don't think there was any point in that game where I could have won. He just, hit what he needed to hit and played really well. Yamato was definitely a crazy player, and watching him continue to play, even through his game with Allen in the finals, he was an exceptional player. He's not someone that I'm, really hurt to have lost to, just because I can see that he was really good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Alan even said in his winning tweet, like, it could have gone the other way pretty easily just with
Mm-hmm.
a little bit different RNG. So, kind of showcasing
Sure.
that at that top 8 level, the difference between players is this much. And, it kind of comes down to the draws and parts of it. But making your draws good is also, like, a key component of, like, are you banking spell mana for that one spell, or, like,
For sure.
playing to your outs in a way. But, so after that first set, what was it looking like then afterwards?
So I mean,
yeah.
I
It,
ended
oh,
up
it was
losing.
single Elam.
Yeah, it was one and done.
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah,
single
single
Elam.
Elam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was looking
top 8
great from the
confirmed.
sidelines, I just
Yeah.
got to watch.
Yeah,
But-
front row seat.
I mean, yeah, that's only 8 people out of 256 made it that far. So that's like an insane accomplishment to kind of like cornerstone cap that run that you've been having, and I'm happy to see that you've been on the Twitch verse a little bit since then. Did your performance kind of motivate you to say, hey, maybe people can like learn from watching me how to play the game?
Definitely. I mean, it was something where I had streamed a little bit before, like some tournaments and stuff, nothing too big. Um, but I ended up doing incredibly well, and I'm glad that I got top eight. I think top eight sounds a lot better than top 16.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Yeah,
as
coming
well as
from
like I was
yeah,
the second highest North American player in the ranking, only behind What Am I, right? And being behind What Am I think that's okay. I think everyone's okay with that.
Yep.
absolutely. He was
Um,
destroying prior to I think he lost to
yeah,
Shihu or Allen. I can't remember which of the two, but
I think it
yeah.
was
I think he ended up getting knocked out by
Shihu.
Alan.
Or no. Oh, was it Alan?
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
I think it
Alan.
was
Okay,
Allen.
okay.
Yeah,
But
but
no, I
prior
mean,
to that, he was definitely performing well.
yeah, What Am I's insane. But being able to do that well, and I think I had a lot of people who were like, "Hey, you really should stream. You're pretty good at this game." Which and you explain your thoughts well. I think you would do well at that. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll try it out because this is sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? Like you don't top eight worlds all the time. Um, hopefully I do, right? But in terms of the first worlds,
Still got to
it's
take
definitely
advantage when you do, for sure.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were a good number of known like streamer names that made it that far, which is really cool. Obviously, Alan winning the whole thing, and Shihu and What Am I? But
Hmm.
there are other players as well who like play at that top level and don't showcase their gameplay. And I think it's really cool that you're able to like take that, kind of carry it on, and make something out of it. Sort of in the same way that like just Mo has been hitting it hard after winning seasonal as well. So you have that momentum behind you, and you can definitely do a lot with it, which is awesome to see, man.
Absolutely. How's the experience
It's
been for you as well?
I mean, the streaming's have been great. It's only been a few days of, actually streaming, but just the people coming and supporting has been awesome. As well as just, I'm going to be grinding ladder anyway, right? So if I have people there to, talk to try and help out with, to answer questions, or even just to keep me company, it's been awesome. It's definitely something I've been enjoying a lot.
Absolutely. Well,
I
I
want
think
to.
yeah.
My final thought would be: we have a seasonal coming up. It's pretty close. Do you have any sort of like quick predictions for what you would expect to see? Uh, what is your sort of meta read at the moment? What are you looking at?
I think there's going to be a lot more aggro than we've seen in previous seasons. Like aggro has always been like the dark horse. Someone might bring it. Mo might 9-0 in open
Yeah,
rounds with it, but no one will actually do well with it. But right now there's some good aggro decks. Poppy Ziggs, Gangplank anything. Gangplank's kind of really good. Draven anything. Right. I think for once aggro is like actually in a position to do really well. Um, and then this Shellfolk deck, I don't know if you tried it. This deck is so fucking good.
I gotta try it
It
out.
loses specifically to burn, but if you ignore burn, close your eyes, aggro isn't real, it can't hurt me. It does really well. It's kind of an insane deck. I hope that it's one that gets showcased, and makes it to top cut because it's a ton of fun to play, a ton of fun to watch. There's so many different lines and intricacies. It's an awesome deck. I really like it a lot.
absolutely. I think Shell Folks, just as a card itself, has really been showing up recently. I've been seeing a ton of it on ladder too, so I wouldn't be surprised, like you
Hmm.
said, to see some people representing it in a big way for seasonals.
Yeah, I think if you're bringing the deck, it has a very good chance of making
Yeah,
top cut.
definitely.
Thank you so
Hopefully.
much for joining us, man. This was awesome to kind of connect. And everybody watching, you should go check out Aikado on Twitch and Twitter, because all of us card gamers live on Twitter, apparently. And yeah, thanks so much,
Appreciate you
dude.
guys having me. Thanks.
Uh, one of the key takeaways, I think, was like Darkness was a pretty poor performing deck prior to Worlds, at least in like tournaments and stuff and high ladder. And Yamamoto took Darkness all the way to the final round and came out as number 2. And the deck went undefeated in Yamamoto's run, which really like turned some heads, some analysis, like analysts' heads of like, wait, is the deck really good or is Yamamoto just insane on it?
Yeah, Yamato was like insane with the deck. I remember the first match where I saw somebody brought Darkness, and the commentators seeing the shift throughout the tournament of the commentators being like, "Oh, he brought Darkness. Oh, it's cool," and they were almost like hating on it in a way where like I remember the exact quote was just like, "Oh, this just looks like a darkness build where it's just like just click everything with the word darkness on it and drop it in like a day one darkness build." And then Yamato just went from that point to just showing everybody it's like, no, this is not just like a bad build. This is a good build, and I'm cracked with it. I'm gonna show all you guys that this deck is crazy. And I mean, it's crazy to see like one person's performance with the deck just literally make it like the plague. Like it spread all over. I see it on ladder
Same.
almost like every other game. It feels like
And then but he wasn't the only one, because Shihu, who placed third, I believe, well-known streamer. Shout out to Shihu. We've both gotten raids and appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Heimer, Worlds Gamer, actually took Heimerdinger to third in Worlds. Like, that is I would not have believed it if someone told me that a week prior.
Absolutely. Talking about like my initial reaction once again, I remember seeing a chart of like the champ representation in Worlds, and I saw one Heimer, and I'm like, somebody brought Heimer? This guy's just, I'm like, he's in it for the clout.
The memes.
He's ready to go 0-2 and wrap it up and say, I brought Heimer to Worlds. And I didn't know who brought it. And then I saw it in Shihu's lineup. I'm like, okay, well, Shihu's, I know him. He's cracked. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And he managed to get top 3 with it. And it's not even like, that's the thing when you bring a deck like that, it's probably not getting banned. You're going to have to play that. So he played the Heimer, and he repped it for sure. It's crazy.
That one is not spreading as much as Darkness on the ladder.
Oh, for sure.
Yet to see it.
I think that was a little bit more tournament strategy, tournament tech. You know, you can make it shine around a lineup, but maybe when you're just spamming games on the ladder, it might not work as well for you, for sure.
The third would probably be Alan's Ezreal Shellfolk deck, right? Ezreal Vi, like, that deck performed extremely well for Alan, and that has been popping up as well, like, a good bit over ladder. And Shellfolk, like, surprisingly strong card. More so than I think you would guess looking at it at first, but the deck really allows it to shine and just be like an absolute powerhouse.
Absolutely. I feel like when the card was introduced, not really a lot of people talking about it, and then it just slowly got built upon. Like, I remember when I was commentating for your tournament, I forget which player, somebody brought it, and it was the first time I've seen it like in a deck, and I was like, that looked kind of good. I don't know. That looked like it might have a little bit of potential, and it just kind of scaled from there. And with that one, talking about the tournament, I felt it was really interesting because Alan only actually played it one game the entire tournament. Like, it struck the fear in people. It just got banned, almost auto banned every time. I was like, wow, like, nobody wants to mess with this. So, like, I've seen the Shellfolk. We're coming straight off the infinite Shellfolk glitch and stuff like that. It's like, I don't want none of that. They just and the one time it didn't get banned, it performed. It was cool.
So now I feel like the meta's kind of settled though, since like going into Worlds, the meta, it felt like it was pretty open and still a lot to be discovered. And in like the 10-day week or so since, it's felt like people kind of know what's good right now, and we have sort of a stable lay of the land. Although it feels still like fairly diverse, I would say. There's a lot going on.
I would definitely say it's diverse, and I would say something I just thought of. I found it interesting. Like, I feel like this is the first time where we've had the major tournament. Normally, the major tournament is like the end of the season, right? In the middle of the season. So people got to see like all the decks right now just play and go at it in the middle of the season, going into what's going to be another seasonals now. So yeah, I think a lot of that was like shown of like what the imposters are, what a good lineup looks like, and it's the first time we've kind of had like that for all of us to prep. It's to see like how that performs in that scale.
What have you been liking from the new set, and like what have you been using on ladder?
I mean, for me, I'm always playing some weird stuff. I've been liking a lot of weird decks that might not be known to exist, but as far as like, because normally during seasonals, like I like all the spice and stuff for climbing. During seasonals, I'll do my due diligence to make like good lineup and stuff like that. I think Shellfolk is looking like if we're talking top decks, right? I would say the Shellfolk is somewhere in that hemisphere. Scion, Nami, Zoe, those are all like the kind of killers, I would say.
Yeah.
And then insert Poppy X deck. Poppy is, I feel
Crazy.
like, a very good champion.
Yeah.
And just finding whatever the best Poppy deck really is, because there's Poppy Ionia, Poppy Vandal City, Poppy Noxus. Like, Poppy is getting thrown in every deck under the sun, and I think Poppy's, like, as far as when I build a lineup, it'll definitely be a consideration of like how I want to handle that, because I know I'm gonna see a lot of Poppy for sure.
That's what Mo was saying as well on Twitter. He was like, I have 4 good aggro decks that I want to play, and they all have Poppy in them. So,
Yeah.
like, just super flexible, and I mean, the stats that stick are really strong. My favorite is, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Bandletree, Nox Bandletree deck. I've been playing
Absolutely.
that a ton, and really makes those board of like 1/1s and 2/1s a lot more threatening when you have a Poppy on board.
That was one thing that I found interesting, though. I feel like that's a really strong deck too, and only one person brought it to Worlds of all the players. So like, I'm talking about the data we got. I wish we got a little bit more of the Bandletree data. I don't know what it is that scared people off of that deck so much. I feel like that deck is very strong, very strong.
I feel like I've been using it even recently on ladder, and I think like Draven Caitlyn feels like it's gone. Like it's nowhere to be seen. I've not been running into it at all. And without that and their access to Scorched Earth there isn't a whole lot to remove tree. And now, like with Darkness being more popular too, like you said, and it's good into Nami Zoe as well, like it's just really well positioned. So I would expect to see a whole lot more of tree at seasonals than we saw at Worlds.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I'm surprised that that was the case in general, that it didn't show up in Worlds.
Yeah.
And when I did see it played, I saw it lost and win. I didn't see every single game of the tournament, obviously, but it didn't look like it was like a mistake, as well. The other thing I found interesting too, Sivir Akshan's still a real deck too. I mean, Alan had it in his winning lineup. I don't see it on ladder almost ever, so
Same.
for whatever reason, but in the tournament setting, it performed very well. Like, he wasn't the only one to bring it. I saw a lot of different players bring it as well. Like, what do you kind of think about that deck?
I haven't played it too much, but I played into it a good bit, and I think the nerfs don't kill the deck. Like, I think Sivir not really getting nerfed at all. Like, Rune Runner losing health, like, that's fine, and Merciless Hunter, the nerf there is fine. I think the reason we're going to keep seeing it is, like, people have already just put in so much time on the deck, and they're so good at it, that those minor nerfs are not enough to, like, dissuade them from playing it. And there aren't a lot of decks, I feel like, that do what that deck is doing to that success.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I would expect to see it in seasonals a good bit more than, like, you're right, I'm not seeing it on ladder at all.
Yeah, because I feel like the biggest thing with that deck on why it's like still good is like the complementary pieces got nerfed around it, but neither of the champs got hit.
And
Those
they're
champs
really
are
strong.
very good. They're
Yeah.
definitely, I feel like, not talked about enough. Like how good Akshan is still really good. Same with Sivir. Sivir is still like really good, and both of those champs are just like, it's not talked about enough. I feel like about how good they are. Like Akshan was terror of the meta prior to this, and it's like those other cards that cut. Some people are still running them. I saw it in the tournament, like Rune Runner versions and then Bruiser versions, and both of them performed. It's like Rune Runner losing the 1 health definitely like hit, but it's still a good card. And Bruiser can be pretty scary. Like I'm always praying, like, okay, please don't put Overwhelm on the Sivir, please.
Yeah, like as you were saying, it was in Allen's winning lineup, and they didn't nerf, like, a lot of us thought that the Sivir level condition was going to get tweaked back or something. That didn't happen, and so, like, a lot of the power level being tied to those champions just means that it's remained intact, and a lot of people still have practice on the deck because it was good for so long, so they won't want to abandon that with something like seasonals where we see, like, comfort picks coming way more into play. So yeah, that deck, there is going to be maybe a bit of a disparity between ladder meta and seasonal meta, more so maybe this time. But this is Faint, you should be happy because it feels like we're in a little bit of an aggro meta, man.
I am. I mean, when I'm building my lineup, I'm gonna try to jam in as much as possible for sure. I'm having a great time on the ladder. I've seen a lot of like different opinions as far as like this meta, that I've seen people say that this is their least favorite meta of all of them. And I'm like, I don't know how you could get to that conclusion personally, because it's definitely diverse. Like, whether comparing it to other metas, it's been like so polarized. And I'm
Yeah.
like, damn, some of these people just rather have it like that. And then I've had the inverse opinion where I'm kind of at, where I feel like it's definitely one of the best. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'd put it at my top meta ever. There's been so many metas just across the span of this game, but it's definitely one of my favorites. And it's fun as somebody that like likes to play off meta stuff. It doesn't feel like I'm just getting snuffed out by one deck. You know what I mean?
You
Like
have a chance
sometimes,
too to win like a lot of
absolutely,
matchups.
absolutely,
I think there's like just I agree with you. I'm on like this is one of my favorite metas that we've had. It feels very open. There's a lot of deck diversity. I feel like there's just like two feels bad cards right now, and that's like Nami and probably Lost Soul, I would say, are like the most
yes,
problematic.
yeah,
And even Ruben, shout out Riot Ruben Zoo. He was saying in a recent stream that like Lost Soul's probably a problem and needs to get tweaked.
yeah.
But Nami's like, if you draw Nami, it's really hard for the opponent to come back. And if you don't draw Nami, it like the power level of the deck decreases so much. So that's an
Absolutely.
interesting card, I would say, in the current meta, one of the glaring problem cards.
Yeah, as far as Nami, I think just the impact that she provides is so big, and the fact that her level up condition, I feel like, is just so easy.
Yep.
It's literally just don't you just don't do anything, and and she's leveled, so she's able to drop like turn 4 leveled, and it's like, to that early in the game, a champion with such a high impact when they hit the board to come in that early is like not okay. I feel like personally, it's like if you have the interaction for her, even then she can still get so much value before she gets taken out. And if you don't have interaction for her, she's gonna come turn 4 and you'll be dead like 1 or 2 turns. Like, it's one of the cards I feel like gonna see some tweaking without a doubt, without a doubt.
I feel like it's what champions that are able to be dropped and leveled immediately very easily are a problem. In that same vein, like Scion is insanely strong. And I'm a big fan of the deck. It's like really, really good. It fits my play style well. But like Scion's level condition is bonkers. And it's like 99 out of 100 games he's coming down leveled on 7. And like sure, Minimorph deals with it really easily, but that means like you're forcing your opponents to play decks that have Minimorph, which is a big deck building cost.
I am completely convinced that when they designed this set, they intentionally paired Scion with Minimorph coming out at the same time, because like they knew that. So I am definitely convinced that I feel like Minimorph and Scion were both released together, like, because imagine a
To be yin and
timeline.
yang.
Absolutely, imagine a timeline where Minimorph didn't exist with Scion, because I feel like there is no good ways to counter him outside of Minimorph, and it would have been destruction with this dude coming down. I feel like that's the only reason why he's like somewhat tolerable and manageable, because Scion hits the board, and so many times I'm just like, I lost.
Yep. If you
I got
don't
nothing.
have it,
Yeah.
it's like Scion's also made Vengeance like just straight up a bad card. Like
Yes.
no one's playing Vengeance anymore at all. You would just rather run Minimorph. Like better to trade into Shellfolk, better to trade into obviously doesn't do anything against Scion, but I think two changes that I would like look at for the next patch would be Nami's level condition going up to like 9 mana probably would be good. Like delay it to like turn 5, I feel like would be fair. You could look at the burst stats as well and like maybe make it plus like 2 plus 0 or something, so it's not adding health, similar to like a Veiled Temple nerf. And then Scion, maybe the level condition needs to go to like you've seen 45 power played or discarded, and then he's not coming down leveled every time. Because if you play Scion and he's not leveled, fair like a lot easier to deal with, right?
Absolutely. It's like you said, turn 7 comes around, I've never seen him not have the Scion leveled. It's literally always leveled. So, like you said, that has to go ramped up a lot for sure. I feel like pretty much with all the champions they got introduced in this, not all of them, but a good majority, they're all really easy to level. Even if we're talking like something like Tristana is like super easy to get leveled. So I think that is the thing that just got like kind of understated with the champions in this release, and seeing some tweaks on some level conditions, I think can even out a lot of stuff. And then outside of that, Lost Soul, just yeah, the infinite value that it is insane and definitely needs some tweaking. Another card I would say is on my watch list in my head would be Shellfolk. Shellfolk is very powerful and might need to see some adjusting of some kind, maybe.
Maybe doesn't need the discount or something like that on the card
That
generated. That would be a way to do it that doesn't like kill the flavor, I feel like.
absolutely, I feel like just that probably is good enough because it's good, and I don't think that that's the reason that it's as good as it is. That's just the bonus that makes it like
Yep, over the top.
absolutely over the top.
Mayor is a champion too. I love Mayor.
True,
Though.
I forgot about. I'm a
Mayor.
big fan.
Yeah.
I'm playing some Mayor decks for sure. You're gonna see them in my seasonal lineup. I'll tell you.
A lot of people in my chat are like, "It's never wrong to kill the politician," like on the board and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody on Twitter was like, part of his lore is like, we never appointed a mayor of Bandle City, but he just came over and like,
just
took
showed
over,
up.
and it's like, yeah,
I've
just
seen
like
it.
the meta, that's what he did. But,
Yeah.
yeah, mayor is like the reason why I feel like Poppy is very strong, also because of mayor, like just like
Yeah.
auto
The hand in hand.
You
The
make
combo.
you make a Poro, like play it for free, and then you play Poppy, and then like the curve is you play a Telescope too, like the curve
Absolutely.
is ridiculous.
Speaking of which, I've definitely seen a lot of discussion about Telescope and Manifest in general, of just like how people like, to have agency over like what happens in the game, and then Telescope pulling from such a wide thing that you really can't play around what comes from the Telescope. Like, what do you kind of think about Telescope in general?
I'm on board with that argument that people have. I played Hearthstone a lot before coming to LOR, and as a lot of us have, and like obviously, literally like worlds competitions were lost to like crazy RNG in that game, and I don't want to see that happen in LOR. I'm a big fan of Invokes and like Targon, and that limited pool that Invokes has is like the perfect way to do RNG, because like there's only a certain amount at each mana cost, and you can kind of play around all of them, or you're like, oh, the worst thing they could have here is Crescent Strike or Serpent or things like that. So, like, that limited scope of created by RNG is way better than, like, oh my god, they hit a Ruination, and now they're playing Ruination in a Bandle deck, or you can literally hit Bandle Tree off of it, like,
Absolutely.
in a deck that's not running Bandle Tree. So, it does make it feel like you're just sort of sending it and just not playing around anything and not taking cards into consideration, because there's literally so many possibilities. Like, only a few times am I able to, like, even with the landmark card, the Shurima 3/2, you can like play around the stun landmark and stuff like that, but Telescope is it's a black hole
For sure. I just think that it's what it leads to. I can kind of be okay with just Telescope being like the cannon that it could be, or whatever, the glass cannon that it could be. But the fact that that is a keyword, Manifest, right? And there's going to be more. This is not the full set of Bandle City. There's going to be more of these cards, and I feel like it's just only going to scale. So it's like you said, just if I feel like it needs to be like a range of cards that you can kind of consider as like invoke.
Yeah, and as part of that, like, it being able to create itself is a huge problem. I think a way to manage the RNG would be to, like, maybe set it to a region or, like, 2 regions, and it would be, like, create epics from, Bandle City and PNZ, or, like, I don't know, limit it in some way like that then there's a pool of, 10 to 20 cards that it can be pulling from. That would be a lot more fair. Also, not being able to create itself would be a lot more fair. But as it currently stands, like...
Yeah. I heard this from a third party, so somebody can fact check this information, but I heard that somebody said that Ruben Zuda had stated that in the future Telescope probably will not be able to duplicate itself, create itself.
That's like phase 1 of the problem with Telescope.
And that's like the smallest increment, because I feel like that just gives you so many rolls to get the crazy card, but the fact of the matter is it's just the crazy card that you have no idea of what to play around. I've heard people throwing on suggestions of just like, you can see the card that somebody creates. I think that's a little bit too much. I don't know exactly what idea I would have personally to kind of address the issue, but something, yeah, has to be done to kind of,
Just limit the pool in some way, I think, so
yeah.
that it's known and people, yeah. But
I've
yeah,
seen people's telescope stories. Everyone has one.
you're right that it's like indicative of a bigger problem that could be on the horizon as the rest of the set releases. And a lot of people are saying they're wary of the direction it's going with created cards and created by, because like that's what happened to Hearthstone and killed it, and we don't want that to happen in LOR. So I hope the devs are taking notice of that and like adjusting.
I think they are. I feel like Bandle City has been like a pretty unique region and has offered like a ton of different stuff and like new mechanics in a way. So it's gonna be like a lot of like learning curves. I feel like, for example, I just said Shellfolk. Like I feel like there hasn't been a card like Shellfolk prior to this, so it's like something that's gonna just need to be tweaked along the way. And as long as I get it under control before it turns into a forest fire that I could see it on the horizon. It's like I'm good with it. But the meta has been super fun for sure in a lot of ways. So what do you think of for example, a lot of this information I have on Ruben and stuff he's saying? Ruben's been streaming a little bit.
That's yeah, I'm super hyped to see it. Like obviously he's probably the best known dev on the game, and at least from the competitive side of the community, and he's hit rank 1 multiple times. His decks are usually pretty awesome, and he has a habit of whatever deck he hits rank 1 with, they then nerf cards from that deck, and
Yeah.
Lost Soul was in his most recent like fake Draven burn deck that I did a video on as well. So I would imagine Lost Soul's gonna get hit, but he's like the perfect person to be like speaking for them like through this like informal sort of stream thing.
Yeah.
And he has Dova Geddes, who is a fan favorite on our show, of course.
Absolutely. We always talking about Dova.
He's modding on the channel, so it's like they have other rioters in there who are kind of like monitoring, I feel like. But he like Ruben is just someone we want to like kind of pick his brain and get his thoughts on all the time, because he is both like a really good player and then of course has like access on the dev side. So it's awesome. I hope to see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's not intentional that he's doing it as far as like to be that like resource as far as like in a riot program. I feel like he's kind of just having fun with it.
Yeah.
But the community, the value that stream brings is great, and to just be able to pick his brain in general and just kind of see what the temperature is in the room as far as some of that stuff is really cool for sure. And I found it cool. Like, what do you think about that? What he brought to the table with the fake deck meta in a way.
Yeah.
So he brought that to the table, and I've seen some other people trying it too. I saw somebody hit a high elo with a fake TF Swain that was just also a burn deck, and it's like I've never thought of that prior to seeing that, and I'm like, that's kind of smart. That's pretty interesting for sure.
I think I've played a couple decks like that. Like there were like decks. You remember when Go Hard was popular? There were like
Yeah.
some burn decks that were disguised as Go Hard decks, and
Absolutely.
they definitely got me. But he definitely like brought it back and popularized it. I think it's sick. It's perfect for like closed deckless ladder format. Like for the first, for the first day or two, like when you're not playing into the same people over and over, and like people haven't seen it on stream, you're gonna get those surprise wins because you're like, oh, it's Draven Ezreal. I can take 6 damage and be fine or whatever,
Yeah.
and then Decimate comes down, and then Decimate comes down, and it's like a massive problem. So it's been cool to see. Like it just adds another layer of surprise factor when you're playing into people on ladder right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just been super dope. And like the other thing with it too is just like the fact that that deck is a deck that all it needs is like you hitting face 1 or 2 times.
Yep.
So it's like if they caught you off guard for 1 round, that's enough for you just lost the game because of it. You know what I mean?
Aloof Travelers too, which is I think in that deck another potential problem card, because it just does work into so many of those like later game decks that need their most expensive card is like their win con. So like things like FTR and stuff just get absolutely bodied by Aloof. You can play it correctly too into Scion and try to discard Scion. Of course, hitting Lost Soul is the worst thing you could ever do and draw your opponent a free card. But Yeah, that mechanic of like hand control is also something I feel like we've seen a lot in Hearthstone, and MTG, and it's new to LOR. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on it?
I honestly find it pretty interesting. So I don't hate Aloof as much as probably the next guy. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of different opinions on it. For FTR, I think that's the one example that you named, that there's no like play around in a way. I feel like it adds a new dynamic that didn't exist before. For example, something like Ping City is on copies of Double Up, and part of that reason is because it does protect something like your GP. So there is ways to play around Aloof, but it happens in the deck building rather than in the game. And obviously Aloof can come in there and destroy your game, but it adds a new dynamic that's like pretty interesting. Like I'll be like, oh, let me put in this card because like I can't have this card getting discarded. So that dynamic is super interesting. And honestly, I'm a fan of it personally.
I've liked the play style as well. I mean, everybody's like had feels bad moments with Aloof, but like you can add play around by like holding a mini morph in Bandletree, and then like the mini morph gets discarded. Like that happens all the time in the mirror. Or like my favorite thing in to Scion is to like wait till they played one Lost Soul, and then play Aloof and hope you hit the Scion and that they don't have the second one. But there are like cool play arounds and reads that you can do, like discarding 10 or 2 into like some of those like Poppy Burn, Ziggs Burn decks. Like it does add a new level of like counterplay that there's minimal way to play around it, but there is still like opportunity to to show your skill edge there. Another sort of like surprise deck I feel like that we both had experience on was the Tristana Impact Atro
Yeah.
deck. Like the first day of that deck, it was hot.
It was definitely hot. And I mean, for me, it never really like cooled down too much. It feels like it's still like strong, and it definitely brought to light that Tristana's not bad. Tristana was getting all the hate at
Memed
beginning.
on.
Yeah, getting memed on. It's like, why did they even make this card? And that deck just brought it to the attention of the people that Tristana definitely has value. Her champ spell's amazing in Buster Shot, and then the fact that she activates it too, like that is one level of the varying strengths of Tristana as a champion. And I'm that's the biggest thing I took from that deck is just I'm a Tristana fan for sure. I think she's a super cool champ.
There's a good meme about like, oh, I want a 3 mana, 3 health, 3 attack, quick attack champion, and they're like, yeah, which one do you want? Like, there's
Yeah.
so many of them. I'm a fan too. Like, people have been telling me they've been experimenting with Trist and Bandletree even, to get like that dual region combo, and it's a 3-cost champ. So I think I can't imagine like another deck right now that she would shine more than that deck. Like pairing her with Atrocity just seems super cool, and to work really well. But I'm excited to see if people like can experiment and push her further in the archetypes further.
I mean, I tried my best with it. One of the decks that I've been messing with is Tristana with Sivir, and it's done pretty well for me on ladder too as well. So, but just more with that deck, just bringing to light that I don't think the wall has been hit or the ceiling. Whether that is the top for now, I just think like in the long run, she's a champion that has a broad enough level up requirement that she can fit into a bunch of different stuff. And I think she'll be a champion in the long run that's going to be like finding itself in a bunch of different archetypes, which is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Fizzly Sin too is like probably the newest and hottest deck, and I tried it out and it did pretty well for me. It has like elusive Wincon is like way more central in the deck than Lee Sin is, which is cool because I'm not a big fan of Lee Sin as a champ. But like I was just surprised that it was winning games because I was like, I don't really see how this deck is gonna win in my mind. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you have Green Glade, okay, you have Kelp Maidens, you're getting like a little bit of elusive chip damage, but like where's the finisher? And still like it just somehow manages to like win a bunch.
Yeah. That's what I found funny about this deck is that I feel like we haven't been able to see a Lee Sin deck where Lee Sin isn't, my opinion, super toxic.
Yeah.
My biggest gripe with Lee Sin is just I feel like the overwhelm interaction is like it's a little cheesy. It's not exactly my flavor, my cup of tea. And it's like this doesn't exist in this deck. He's actually just supposed to be like a grind value engine. And I feel like that's what he was kind of almost always what he was supposed to be. And I like that type of Lee Sin.
Yep.
I almost liked when Lee Sin was a lower mana cost and he was getting thrown in everything, obviously, because he was busted. I think the only reason why that really, really wasn't okay was because obviously with Overwhelm, it was insane. It was so insane and it was not okay in so many ways. And if that wasn't in the game, personally, I feel like Lee Sin could be a pretty cool champ. Like,
Yep. I'm starting to like appreciate him a lot more from the games I played with the deck because it's like, yeah, you're not worried about overwhelm damage. You're like, oh, I'm gonna challenge a Nami and I have barrier and I kill the
Yeah.
Nami and I push 3 damage with a kick. It's like it's so much more fair and like what he does as a champion of like challenging and having barrier is at a premium right now. I feel like in the meta just because like there's so many backline value generators, Mayor, Nami, Shelly, what is the shell folk, like all things you want to
backline
remove from the
is-
back line, and he's really good at doing that. But like proper Zoe Lee Sin, it's fallen off so much probably because of Minimorph. Just like you can't really have him be the all-in win con that he was.
I find it ironic though that I've heard so many people say how Lee Sin has fallen off and is
Let's do it again.
proving people wrong.
From which part? Yeah, I'll take it from So yeah, Lee Sin is like removing the backline value generation cards like Shellfolk, cards like Mayor, Nami, Shelly. Like Lee Sin is really good at doing that with Challenger and the barrier, and that feels just a whole lot more fair than the Overwhelm OTK. And because of Minimorph, I feel like Lee Sin Zoe, like the original version, is not as strong right now because you have Minimorph running around, so he can't be the all-in win con that he once was.
Yeah. And with that being said, I just find it funny though because I've heard this opinion many a time. But rank 1 NA holding the throne over all of us is MTux, and he's Lee Sin gamer, and he somehow manages to make it work. I don't know what his secret is as far as like how he's able to navigate the aloofs, navigate the mini morphs, and all these things that we would think and are really big counters to Lee Sin. Still managed to not just win games, but hold the top spot on the ladder.
That's a deck like we were talking about tournament only decks, and I feel like outside of MTuck pulling however the hell he's pulling that off, this dark magic, like Lee Sin Zoe is probably a deck that is going to come back, I would say, for seasonals. Again, like so many people know how to play it, they've had good success in tournaments, and you're probably not seeing a whole lot of triple Minimorph lineups. There's probably only one deck, I would imagine, maybe 2 that are bringing it. But I would imagine seeing that a lot more in the seasonals.
Absolutely. And with Lee Sin, just like even if you do roll these bad matchups, they need to draw the answer. And if they don't draw the answer, you're Lee Sin. You can can definitely still win those games. So that's the thing about Lee Sin as a deck, I feel, is just like even if it's the bad matchups, you're never safe. You're never safe from Lee Sin coming down and kicking you in the face for 20.
Do you think there's anything left out there faint to be discovered in this meta?
I think there is stuff to be discovered in this meta, but I feel like the main points, we hit all the main points of this one, and it's done like what it's needed to do. And I'm just excited for how this stuff is going to pair with new cards, because I feel like we've done a lot with what is here, but none of this stuff is like, it's also flexible, I feel. So it's like whatever new cards are introduced, new champions, like we're going to be able to go back to all of these cards that are coming from this set and just build some like cool decks, which is my favorite. Absolutely.
Yeah, same. I'm not the one to like discover the new meta deck, but I'm definitely the one to hop on the hype train once it's been discovered. So we'll keep our eyes on the horizon as after seasonals. I mean, we're getting some new cards again like pretty soon. Which is like feels good and is kind of wild because it feels like still, you know, we're kind of getting used to the cards, I would say, still, even though like the decks have kind of been settled. It still feels like fresh to me. I'm not tired of playing LOR. Like I'm in the stage where I'm like having so much fun. I just want to constantly play it.
Absolutely. It's one of the golden ages, I feel, for sure.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I feel like we kind of touched on most of the stuff that needs to be touched on. So, Squeeby, once again, pleasure as always.
My man. That's
Till next
episode
time.
5. Wrapping it up. Thanks for coming through, everybody. Peace.
Peace. Cool.
We did it, dude.
We somehow made it through all that.